Hi everyone, it's time for another live look at the astrology. My name is Katie Sweetman, and this is your look at the astrology for February 2nd through 8th, 2026. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of a late start to the day, but yeah, I've overslept, which is kind of off what I normally do. But anyway, it's Groundhog Day. Maybe we're just waking up on a loop. I have no idea if the groundhog saw his shadow or not, but it is also deeply symbolic just from like past history. It's about the light and it's Candlemas, and it's that point of midwinter where we are in bulk. We are between the winter solstice and we are between the spring equinox. So this is typically a time that the ancients marked. It's a time of feast and celebration in different cultures, but having said all of that, for those that don't know who I am, my name is Katie Sweetman. I'm an astrologer and psychic medium located here in the rolling hills, very cold rolling hills of central Maryland. And every week we gather live to look at the astrology. You hear me say it every week. The astrology is 50%. You are the other 50%. And it is a big month ahead of us, at least on paper. And when we have not just an eclipse, because we have our first eclipse on February 17th, we have also Saturn going into Aries on February 13th. We have the Saturn-Neptune conjunction on February 20th. Those alone mean that February symbolically, it'll be different for each person, of course, that February alone is a very significant month. It is a time of transitions, inflection points, a time of crossroads where old stories are coming to a close and new stories are beginning to come in. But for, I don't know why it's hard to speak, maybe because of just how cold it is these days. But, for what is going on this month, we have to sort of break it down by down because to really put it in the focus of what's happening and why February is such a significant month. I know we've just had a full moon. It's like we got to talk about the full moon. We got to talk about sort of the bigger points for February of 2025, 2026. Good Lord, and even with Saturn coming to 29 degrees of Pisces this week, it means that we are really stepping into a transition point this week. Stories from 3 years ago when Saturn first went into Pisces in March of 2023 are beginning to come to a close. But let's just sort of dive right in. So let me know how you're feeling. I sort of common conversation with clients is that people feel like there's something on the horizon. They feel like that things are about to change. And I think on some level that's collective, but certainly for some of the zodiac signs, you're going to see some bigger changes, at least overall, in 2026. This is something that I actually broke down quite in detail in my webinar, The Astrology of 2026. You can go to my website, empoweringastrology.com. The link is in the show notes. It is a really extensive webinar. It gives you dates so that you can sort of see what is going on with your sign and plan ahead. But that said, so let's sort of, again, break it down by down because my brain apparently isn't working today. So let's start with the fact that it's a pivotal month. Why is February of 2026 a pivotal month? Well, number one, we have Saturn coming to the end of Pisces. It has been in Pisces since March of 2023. And apart from, say, end of May of 2025 to September 1st of 2026, Saturn made a little bit of a dip into Aries. But apart from that, we've been working through a story. Now, I've said this periodically. It's important to say it again, that Pisces is not an easy sign for Saturn to be in. Why? Because Saturn, on one hand, is the lessons that we have to learn. And when the lessons are through the water signs, in the case of Pisces, which is a water sign, it's not concrete, it's emotional. In the case of Pisces, it's also spiritual. One of the things about Saturn and Pisces over the last few years is to make peace with sometimes the things that in our lives we shouldn't be at peace with. And maybe it's even more than just our lives. And that's one of the hardest things of Saturn and Pisces, is how do you make peace with something that intellectually you shouldn't make peace with? The beauty of Pisces is that it's not to condone the things that have happened to us in our past. It's not to hold on to them because we need to sort of prove that something happened. It is to be able to let go, because Pisces then becomes the water that brings us to the new beginnings, and that are symbolized when Saturn goes into Aries. So between now, roughly, and February 13th, when Saturn goes into Aries, we're in a really weird part of the zodiac, 29 degrees of Pisces, that it represents the last moment of the zodiac. It's the last breath. It's the last moment of our day, symbolically. It's the last breath of our life, symbolically. It's the last moment of all of our lifetimes, symbolically. And it's a space of transition, but it's also a very emotional space as well. And so with Saturn at 29 Pisces all the way until the 13th, we are leaving something behind. It could be an old chapter. It could be an old life, air quotes. You may feel a natural state of grief. And grief, there's positive grief. Positive grief is what we feel when we are leaving one part of our life for another. But maybe something very old is also coming up as well, and that in the space of the zodiac, symbolically speaking, allows us to let something go, so that something new can come in its place, of course, when Saturn goes into Pisces. This part of the zodiac, it's the most removed from anything that's physical and material. It can be a dream. It can be our intuition. It can feel like we're being carried away by something. We're not quite rooted and grounded when something's at 29 degrees of Pisces, or in this case, Saturn is at 29 Pisces. Saturn hasn't been at 29 Pisces since, I think it was April of 1996, so very long time ago, but it really sets the tone for the first half of February, and really for, even though it's the first month and a half of the year, it really sets the tone for the start of the year as well. Saturn is in a space that Neptune has previously inhabited. Neptune has left Pisces. It has gone into Aries. These are two planets that are roughly side by side, but symbolically speaking, because tropical astrology, Western astrology is a symbolic system, they're in two different spaces. And when Saturn goes into Aries on February 13th, both Neptune and Saturn will be together in the sky by sign and by element. Right now, they're in two different spaces, even though I know visually we can't see Neptune. We can certainly see Saturn in the sky under the right conditions. They're side by side. I don't know about declination, but we don't need to get too technical about it. But so there's that. And just as an aside, and I feel like I've said this the past couple of weeks, it's not a good time to start something. It's a time to end something, but it's not a good time to start something. If you have something big that you need to say yes to, of course, trust your heart, trust your intuition. But anything that you commit to right now, including an I do, something will change when Saturn goes into Aries. And by progression, I'm being technical astrologer here for a moment, by progression, something will change within the year after you say yes to something. So if you can, wait till after the 13th. It's more concrete, it's more solid, it's more grounded. We even have the solar eclipse coming up, which sort of adds a layer of complication, but take that as you will. That's your little technical astrology sidebar. So let's also talk about what else is going on in February. So the big news, which it's hard to top Saturn going into Aries on February 13th, is the solar eclipse at 28 degrees of Aquarius on February 17th. Now, eclipses, they're pretty routine. They happen every 6 months. We are right now definitely an eclipse season. It means that life is starting to heat up. Things have a deeper subtext. Perhaps that you're navigating personal events. But that said, we are still wrapping up a eclipse cycle that began when we had the solar eclipse in Virgo back on September 21st of 2025. So that was 6 months ago. And it said that we have been in a lens over the last 6 months that's been through Virgo, needing to find greater perfection or discipline or mastery, to work hard at something. Virgo is about putting things in order, to clean things out, to focus on our health and wellness. Virgo is other things, but we've all lived that sort of larger umbrella of time in our own way over the last 6 months. Then we change, because the solar eclipse will open a new chapter when we have the solar eclipse on February 17th, and that will take us all the way to the solar eclipse of August 12th of 2026. This solar eclipse will be in Aquarius. It says Aquarius is our overarching theme that takes us over the next 6 months. It sort of creates a container for us to live in personally and collectively, personally depending on our own astrology, collectively as a larger theme for all of us to go through as human beings. And with this eclipse in Aquarius, it says it sort of pushes to the forefront these bigger themes about humanity and society, social issues, social causes, belonging, connection, groups. Aquarius is not an individual sign. It's nearly the end of the zodiac. It's the second to last zodiac sign. And so when we are in Aquarius season, or we have a lot of planets in Aquarius, check and check, we're now turning towards the exterior. We're now looking towards the world. Aquarius is also our hopes and our dreams and our wishes for the future. What do we want? What do we want to create? There can be a very idealistic side of Aquarius. There can also be a very misanthropic side of Aquarius. It's the duality of the sign. And so we will be seeing shades of both over the next 6 months. How do we find our unity and our connection? How do we look at what separates us and creates division? Aquarius. Aquarius is ruled by Saturn at present, and this will change at the time of the solar eclipse. Saturn is at the last degree, so all this Aquarius energy is moving in the zodiac towards the end of Pisces. There's something very deeply emotional about this time. It's getting into bigger themes. Pisces is a sign that reaches towards the soul and the soul's journey. And so we're asking ourselves big questions. Why am I here? What is the meaning and purpose of my life? What is this all for? But that will take on a different, let's say, energy when Saturn goes into Pisces on February 13th, because the eclipse of February 17th will then point towards 0 Aries. Saturn is the traditional ruler of Aquarius, and so Saturn receives the energy of the eclipse, and it says over the next 6 months, it's not just about humanity, society, social issues, and social causes. It's about new beginnings. It's about action, moving forward. We are leaving behind an old cycle. We are stepping into a new time. And the wild card with all of this, there's a couple of wild cards, is one, Saturn and Neptune will be conjunct. So it's not just Saturn at 0 Aries, it's Saturn conjunct Neptune at 0 Aries. The last time Saturn and Neptune were conjunct in Aries, I don't know what 0 Aries was, I think the early 1700s. It's been a while. The last time Saturn and Neptune were conjunct, just period, was in 1989. So that's a little bit more recent, a little bit more run-of-the-mill, but that conjunction was in Capricorn. So if you were born in 88, 89, and 90, you have Neptune in Capricorn, you have Saturn in Capricorn, and you have Uranus in Capricorn. But that's another conversation for another time. So Neptune, it's a very different energy than Saturn in Aries, because Saturn, although technically it's not at home in Aries, it's a little bit of a bigger conversation. Neptune is an evolutionary planet. It talks about a force of evolution. Sometimes evolution is complicated. Sometimes Neptune is very emotional. It's very spiritual. Sometimes it really can reach into deep spaces. I feel that we will not right away see what this Neptune and Saturn Neptune conjunction will be about, because we need to it plants a seed. And then we'll get into, after April 9th, Mars will go into Aries, and so Mars will activate that energy come April. So there is a seed that's planted in February of 2026 that it may take a little bit to see what it's exactly creating, what it's bringing into our lives. And sometimes we do see the energy of eclipses right away. Sometimes we need to wait. Sometimes we wait 3 months, because that 3-month period after the eclipse and that 3-month period before the eclipse means that we can see the energy come in. So this will be around the May 16th Taurus new moon. So in total, and the other wild card that I forgot to mention was that this solar eclipse squares Uranus. And so we have this energy not just of Neptune dissolving the boundaries between our physical world and our non-physical world, that are opening up our feeling, our compassion, sometimes feeling flooded. We also have the square to Uranus that says that this is a 6-month period where there is a push to make changes. There is a time of evolution and transformation. Uranus can be chaotic, if I'm being completely honest. If you are a Taurus or a Scorpio in particular, you have been navigating Uranus and Taurus over the last 6-7 years. But it's a very interesting time astrologically, from about February up until about August. It goes a little bit beyond that, but that's really where we're seeing a narrative, at least on paper, at least with the astrology concentrating. So, when we go through each of the 12 zodiac signs, sort of get little snippets of what this can mean for you. For some signs, it's the start of a major new beginning, for example. So that's February, but let's look at this week. And this week, we start the week with a Leo full moon. This Leo full moon actually was yesterday. I even talked about this last week. I was like, there's just so much going on, with the Mars-Pluto conjunction, and let's just push it to Monday. So here we are. So we just had it. It was at 5:10 p.m. Eastern yesterday, February 1st. But the Leo full moon is still with us. A full moon in general is a time to take action. I know I said that earlier, like it's not time to take action. That's sort of the conflict with the sky at the moment, but it's typically a time to take action. We see events, we see sort of this push to navigate whatever's going on in our life. And I wrote this in my report for the new moon, is that it's important to understand that the full moon is in the sign of the sun. What do I mean by that? Leo is the sign of the sun. The sun gives light. It is a point of vitality in the astrology. It talks about the self. It talks about individuality. That's why everybody about sun signs, which is, it's fun, but it's personality. It's the self. It's the ego. But with Leo full moon, the moon doesn't give light. It reflects light. And so this is a full moon where there's a theme that's being reflected back to us about the sun, about being creative, about being self-expressive, to knowing who we are. I think on some level this full moon, especially with all the planets and even Pluto and Mars in Aquarius, this full moon is really trying to get us to look at ourselves in the mirror, look at ourselves as a collective, and to really see ourselves for who we truly are. Leo full moon in general is a time for us to remember what lights us up and gives us joy. I said remember on purpose because the moon is about memory. It's about our needs, our wants, and our desires. It's not the desires of Mars, it's the desires of the heart. It's the desires of the spirit. It is to be fulfilled, it is to be seen, it is to be loved. That's the moon. And so to have a full moon in Leo, it says we need to get back to the things that actually give us joy, that light us up. And maybe, well, it's always specific to for everybody's life. But when I talk about Leo as a sign in general, I always like to remind people that the sign that comes after Leo is Virgo. Virgo is work, health, projects, duties, and responsibilities. It doesn't mean that we sort of push away Leo as we step into Virgo. In fact, Leo is supposed to support Virgo. Whatever we do in our life, it needs to be done out of love, out of joy, out of passion. We should be so lucky. But it's a reminder, especially maybe through these really cold winter days. I know that we are international audience. We're on 2 different hemispheres. It's really cold right now, at least where I am. But it is to get back to that spark of life and the things that used to light us up and give us joy. And maybe we need to make some changes. That's another sort of energy with the full moon. There is a dynamic quality with this full moon. It's not an eclipse, but in a way it prepares us for an eclipse, because this full moon will be or at least was at 13 degrees of Leo, and on August 12th we will have a solar eclipse at 20 degrees of Leo. So it sort of brings to the forefront, maybe subtly, maybe not so subtly, a theme and a dynamic that we will play out throughout 2026 and even into 2027. So we got Leo full moon. We have 5 planets at the moment in Aquarius. That is a lot of planets in Aquarius at the moment, and we're actually going to start to see that shift and move, even though Aquarius is going to be a much bigger arching theme into August. At the moment, Mercury will, by the end of this week, will be in Pisces. So Mercury gets into Pisces on February 6th. It goes into a sign where Mercury, which is about information, ideas, choices, communication, it goes from the very intellectual, very analytical Aquarius, and it goes into more of that intuitive and compassionate side of Pisces. And I think even next week, although I'd have to go back and look, we will start to have Venus out of Aquarius as well, but I have to double check that. So there you go. That's your look at the astrology of this week. Of course, we'll go through each of the 12 zodiac signs. Just to quickly remind you, I am doing a free webinar this week on February 5th, so Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern. This is something that I do in parallel to my astrology. It's about energy and consciousness, so I will do a 1-hour introduction to energetic sciences. This is something that is hosted by an organization called Mercy Academy in Switzerland. I've been teaching for them since 2018. I feel like this is my Uranus and Taurus story, and this is to teach you about the weft, which is the fabric of creation, about how it is the support for life, it is the support for communication, it is the support for intuition. And when we begin to shift our consciousness, we can feel how we are all connected through the weft, and that sort of brings to larger questions. For those that want to learn about rising the consciousness of humanity, there's this webinar. It, again, is free on February 5th at 8 p.m. Eastern. It will be recorded for replay. We will do a 10 to 15 minute exercise at the end to be able to feel with our hands this energetic fabric. But the module 1 that I am doing, this will actually be the weekend of February 21st and 22nd. It is to dive more deeply into these themes about energy, the energy that we can see and touch, the energy that we can't see and touch, about the 4 elements. In fact, there are 2 more elements, ether and weft, the 5th and the 6th element. And also, what is it all connected to? So if you have any interest in consciousness or energy, definitely check it out. The link is in the show notes. You can also go to my website, empoweringastrology.com. So I hope to see you there. So let's look at the astrology of each of the 12 zodiac signs, starting with Aries. So Aries, so Mars is your planet, and as of January 23rd, Mars is in Aquarius. it has moved the energy of your astrology towards what's called your 11th sign. And it will be in this part of your astrology, I think, until the 2nd of March. So that's a month from now. The 11th sign points you towards humanity, society, social issues, social causes. I know that's a big, vast topic. On a more personal level, it's your community, it's your friends. And maybe you are navigating both levels. On a personal level, you have 5 more weeks or 4 more weeks to really put the energy of your sign towards your social circle. Maybe you are getting more involved in your groups, or you're connecting with friends, or maybe it's more philosophical and you want to get involved in something like volunteering or something that really feels like it's connecting to more meaning and purpose in the world. There are a lot of planets right now in your 11th, so it really is about the bigger stuff, and even the sort of the questions of who are your friends? What are you connected to? What is, especially with Saturn in its last week or 2 weeks or week and a half of Pisces, what is the meaning and purpose of your life? So that's the thing, Aries, and we've been talking about this periodically. Saturn going into Aries on February 13th is the start of a major new cycle of your life. And you may feel that your life is maybe shifting and pivoting. Maybe one big chapter is coming to an end and another big chapter is beginning to come into your life. With Saturn in Aries, we'll come back to this, it's a time where you need to commit, you need to take action, you need to sort of stand on your own 2 feet. More responsibilities in general are asked of us when Saturn is in our sign or even our rising sign. In the interim, and I've been saying this also, you want to be very conscientious about what you are bringing with you into this new cycle past February 13th. It is to leave things behind, let things go, to get in touch with your emotional side, search your soul, because it's a different energy once we get past February 13th, and definitely once we get past that solar eclipse of February 17th. We just had a Leo full moon. The Leo is what's called your 5th sign. It's about the self. It's about creativity. On one hand, again, like I was saying in the introduction, it's a reminder to get back in touch with the things that light you up and give you joy and give you passion. If you are burnt out, how do you return to something, that spark, that flame that is going to give you life? If you are creative, this full moon is a push for you to create more. On some level, it's getting into themes that you will see again in 2025. But it's on some, it's as much as there's a lot of action in the sky about parts of your astrology that are not personal, that are actually beyond you. It's not to forget what you need and what lights you up and gives you joy. Taurus, so Venus is your planet, and Venus right now there's a lot of planets in Aquarius with Venus. We got Mars, we got Pluto, we've got Mercury, we've got the Sun, and Aquarius for you is something called your 10th sign. So maybe on one level, this is just a lot of things going on in your career right now. If it's not your career, maybe you're being asked to take on more responsibilities right now. Maybe it's a lot of movement in sort of this general part of your astrology that asks you, what are you growing up to be or to become? Venus, I think, I feel begin it goes into Pisces. It is next week. It's the 10th. So, Venus by next week, it will start to point towards a different part of your astrology. But in the meantime, it is playing off of bigger themes that you may see in February and beyond, because you are going to have a solar eclipse in your career sign on February 17th. It says that over the next 6 months, perhaps already, because sometimes we can see the eclipse early, there is some sort of change in your career. Could be a change in your position, you get a new job, you change industries, things are happening, but it's in general a dynamic time in your astrology. Venus is squaring Uranus this week, and it's just a quick reminder. I actually did not talk about this in the introduction, but don't worry, there's more things to talk about next week. Uranus turns direct this week. It turns direct on tomorrow, February 3rd. And Uranus has been in Taurus since May 2018 and also March of 2019. And this has been 7 years. Of course, every Taurus has lived this time differently, but there has been a big push for you to make changes, even if those changes are just internal. But I can go through a litany of Taurus risings in my brain, and a lot of things have happened in your life in the last 6-7 years. So Uranus turning direct tomorrow, the 3rd, is the last time that Uranus will turn direct in your sign. So it's that last push that will take you all the way to April 25th when Uranus finally leaves Taurus for Gemini. But whatever's happening this week, in a way, it's a connected, it's a thread, it's a ripple to something that has been playing out through your life since 2018 and 2019. So Venus square Uranus, although it's later this week, talks about these bigger changes, this need to reinvent yourself and maybe to take your life in a different direction. Oh, Leo full moon. So Leo is also a big sign in your astrology. It's your sign of home and family and roots and foundation. And that full moon, maybe it's saying something is going on in your household. It's time to move. It's time to make a change in your living situation. But I also want to put this area on into your notice because you will have a solar eclipse in this space in August. So there's just a lot of things going on in your astrology. It's both about career in 2026. It's both about home and family and your living situation in 2026. And February may be a very pivotal month. Gemini, so Mercury is your planet, and Mercury is coming to the end of its time in Aquarius this week. Aquarius for you is something called your 9th sign. There's actually a lot of planets right now in your 9th sign. We have Mars, we have Pluto, we have Venus, we have the Sun, and Mercury until the 6th of February. So there's a lot of things that maybe you feel that you are compelled to communicate right now. It's the 9th is a space where we really look outside of ourselves. We look towards the world. It helps us to forge a sense of belief, what we believe in, what we stand for, a sense of truth and convictions. It could be education on one hand. It could be philosophy on the other. Or maybe you just have a lot of opinions right now. Mars is also in that space. Mars is not the diplomat, so it's just to be a little bit careful about how you're communicating. That's just sort of a general statement. But when Mercury leaves Aquarius, which it will on the 6th, it will go into your 10th sign of career, public life, your public reputation. And Mercury will actually spend quite some time, 2 months in this space, because it will turn retrograde at the end of February. That's another conversation for another time. So also keep in mind that, and this is something that we've been talking about over the past few years, Saturn has also been in Pisces since March of 2023. And you have been in a nearly 3-year period where you've needed to figure out what do you want to be when you grow up. Maybe at this point you know, maybe you've made big changes in your professional or public life over the past few years. But listen now for Saturn, because Saturn is in its last week and a half in this space, not to return for 30 years. And Saturn is beginning to show you the results of this time. Either you are committing to a new path, or you're sort of seeing your hard work come to fruition, or maybe Saturn is setting a boundary for you and telling you no. But in general, for Gemini, this has been a 3-year period to take on more maturity and responsibility, to quote unquote grow up. Keep that in mind over the next week and a half, to listen again for Saturn, for what Saturn is showing you about this time in your life. Now, Mercury will be joining the space, and Mercury pulls your energy towards this space. So you may need to take more responsibility and take on more of a public role over the next even 2 months, because we have the Mercury retrograde. We are about to have a solar eclipse. The solar eclipse is in your 9th, so a lot of opinions and beliefs and sort of questions and getting your voice out there and publishing something, speaking, maybe that's really beginning to heat up in your life. We just had a Leo full moon. This Leo full moon is in your third sign of voice, communication, how you think and listen and learn. So there is a dynamic tension between these parts of your charts, but it says overall in 2026, because there will be eclipses in your ninth, eclipses in your third. It's really a year that's either about education or really getting back to how you think and listen and learn, or it's about writing something, speaking something, teaching something, or perhaps even a lot of movement and travel. What else? I think that's it. Cancer. So the moon is your planet, and we've just had a full moon in Leo. And for you, Cancer, Leo is something called your second sign. It's about voice, not second, it's your second sign is about money, income, material stability, and security. And sometimes we have a full moon in that space. Something financial is on the front burner. You need to make a decision about spending, or you're looking to make a purchase. You're looking at your resources. It's about your income. Maybe it's about bigger questions around value and worth. Keep in mind, there are presently 5 planets in something called your 8th sign. The 8th sign has an emotional and spiritual side to it, but it also has a material and financial side to it. So maybe some of this dynamic that's happening in the sky at the moment might be pulling at bigger financial themes for Cancer. If it's not just about your money, it also, especially with the 8th, it's about financial planning for the future, insurance, investments. Of course, this is not going to be relevant for everybody, but it's one of the ways in which this astrology might be showing up in your life. This week, I forgot to say, the moon is going from Leo, and then by Tuesday and Wednesday, it's into Virgo. We are actually coming to the end of an eclipse cycle. This eclipse cycle began on September 21st, and so Virgo was a larger focus in your astrology over the last 6 months. It is to begin to look back at this space where maybe the last 6 months have been about taking classes, or getting back to basics, learning something, reading something, writing something, focusing on your communication, how you speak, how you listen, how you learn. And that might be coming up on Tuesday and Wednesday. And then you get to the later part of this week, the moon will go into Libra. It's much more of a space for you that's about home and family. Libra brings you into Saturday, but by Sunday it's in Scorpio, which is more of an emotional space for the moon to be. It is that last quarter moon before a solar eclipse, so things are getting a little bit weird, if I'm being completely honest. Speaking of that eclipse will be in something called your 8th. Again, maybe it's about financial matters right now. Maybe it's about looking at what you have and what you don't have. But maybe, because the 8th can get into deeper emotional themes and even spiritual themes, it's a time for you to really focus on your emotional health and wellness, especially over the next 6 months. Maybe that means that you need to spend time speaking to somebody, working on past trauma, anything that you've been holding on to. Maybe it's a 6 months to do a lot of deep inner work, because the real spiritual side of the 8th is that soul alchemy, where we can shed ourselves, shed our past, our ego, and to begin to open up to the higher self, which is in the 9th. My joke about the 8th is that if the 9th is wisdom and knowledge, how do we get wisdom and knowledge? We have to go through the 8th. So whatever is happening over the next 6 months ultimately is to help you to have deeper wisdom and knowledge. Leo, you are in the spotlight right now. There is a Leo, or at least there was a Leo full moon on February 1st, so yesterday, Sunday, and it is a dynamic time to be a Leo or Leo rising. Why? It's not just this full moon. February in general has some bigger shifts, and the primary bigger shift is that solar eclipse that we're going to have on February 17th. So this says that over the next 6 months, the area of change in your astrology is relationships. Aquarius is your relationship sign. Keep in mind, this is all relationships. This is not just what I like to call the capital R relationships, our romantic partnerships, our partners, but how do we connect, relate, and socialize with people? If you've for example, have been isolated, a solar eclipse in the 7th is about bringing new people into your life or changing the dynamic or narrative in this part of your life. If you are in a partnership, what I like to call, again, the capital R relationships, it is about a new time in the relationship, a new milestone. This can be the major stuff, a move, a baby, a marriage, something that changes the dynamic. Of course, that's not going to be relevant for everybody, but Leo, you may feel that 2026, things are on the horizon, things are moving. And I would even go so far as to say, even though I just talked about this solar eclipse, the second half of the year may be a bit different, because by then Jupiter will get into Leo starting in July. You're going to have that solar eclipse in August, on August 12th. And so a lot of things are way more movie, that's even like proper English, in the second half of the year. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We have this solar eclipse on the 17th that you may start to be like plugging into. You may start to feel it, or even see some of those relationship themes coming up in your life right now. This Leo full moon, and especially that Aquarius solar eclipse on the 17th, it squares Uranus. Uranus is in your career sign, and this has been 7 years at this point of reinventing your career, your public life, your relationship with duties and responsibilities and maturity. And it says that for Leo, the next 6 months could be a time of big shifts and changes. I know that's a big statement, but that the astrology is really lining you up for some major pivotal changes for the next 6 to 12 months, actually. What else we got? Yeah. So, just started going through my list. Yeah, we're good. Oh, and also Uranus is turning. I knew there was something. Uranus, I didn't write it down. Uranus is turning direct this week, and it's turning direct in your career sign. So it sort of just adds to what I just said, and maybe this week things are happening in advance of that eclipse. Now, Virgo, so Mercury is your planet, and Mercury leaves this lineup of planets that we have in the moment in Aquarius. We have 5 planets in Aquarius. And Aquarius for you, Virgo, is something called your 6th sign. And the 6, it's about work, it's about health and projects and getting things done and putting things in order. And maybe this has like been your jam. Virgo, certainly you're a sign that's known for systems and organizations. Even if you are a messy Virgo, you typically have a system. Virgo is very systems oriented. For some Virgos, this time has been about service, helping other people, helping your community, for example. Mars and Pluto will stay here Pluto will be here for a long time. Mars will be here until the beginning of March. Venus will leave next week. Mercury will leave on the 6th, so this week, February 6th. And so when Mercury goes into Pisces on the 6th, it sort of changes the vibe, because Aquarius is very rational, very analytical. It kind of plays well to Virgo's strengths. And then Mercury in Pisces is a bit of a different vibe, because Pisces, for Mercury, it's not rational, it's not analytical, it's not objective, it's subjective, it's intuitive. It's something that you picked up in a dream. And the space for you is about relationships. And it says for over the next 2 months, yes, 2 months, because Mercury will turn retrograde at the end of February, relationships are an area that are going to get a bigger review. Keep in mind that Mercury goes into Pisces as Saturn is about to leave. And for the next week and a half, Saturn is at the very end of Pisces, and it's beginning to show you what you've been working on, the results of your work over the last 3 years. You've needed to do some heavy lifting around relationships and partnerships, to learn to connect with people, to ask for help, to put things in balance, to start a relationship, to end a relationship. And so the question for you to reflect on, Virgo, is what have you done over the last 3 years? Who has come in and out of your life? How has relationships really structurally and perhaps even fundamentally changed in the past 3 years? And so Mercury, to some degree, will be reviewing this space, even though Saturn will leave on February 13th, and Mercury, I don't think it's out of Pisces until April 14th. So that's going to be a while until Mercury gets into Aries. We're about to have a solar eclipse, and a couple of weeks the solar eclipse will be in your 6th. So it says work, projects, health, wellness, and service to other people is part of a larger umbrella of time that takes you into August. Not to forget that this is a Leo full moon. Leo is something called your 12th sign. So this is a full moon to leave something behind, to be in the space of endings, to let something go. But Leo for you is also a very spiritual sign, and it sort of plays off this dynamic that's happening in the sky between the service of Aquarius, the sort of earthly service in your astrology, but also the bigger meaning and purpose and even spiritual service that you get in the 12th. How do you find the balance between heaven and earth, the part of you that is very much of this world and the part of you actually that is beyond this world? Maybe there's a lot of soul searching that's happening. There's a lot of big stuff in the astrology at the moment, but an eclipse says that if something's in your heart and you need to sort of align your life to it, then maybe the eclipse over the next 6 months is saying you need to make changes in your day-to-day life in order to align with something that is more in your heart and in your soul. Libra. So Venus is your planet, and Venus right now is in a lineup of planets in Aquarius. Aquarius is something called your 5th sign. I love the 5th, and I'm certain I've probably said that over the past few weeks, because the 5th is a space that lights us up, gives us joy, gives us passion. That's not to say that you have been super happy or full of joy over the last few weeks, but this has been a time for you to get back to the things that actually support you and nourish you. Maybe there's been bigger themes about the self and the identity, the who are you sort of question that we all have to ask ourselves. You've got Mars in this space. It's a very creative time, or you're really expressing yourself in some way. Pluto is there. It's talking about larger changes to yourself and how you express who you are, and really stripping away the false sense of self. And then, the sun is there, although the sun is in this part of the astrology every time this year. Venus is there, your planet, and then Mercury is there until the 6th of February, so this week. And so really sit with these bigger questions about identity and self, and how you prioritize yourself, because sometimes, Libra, you put other people first. You're a people pleaser. And how do you try to find the balance between wanting everybody to be happy but not leaving yourself out of the mix, for example? There is a Leo full moon this week. Leo is something called your 11th sign. So there is a dynamic between you and sort of your talents, gifts, and abilities and how you express yourself, but also the collective. Leo is something called your 11th sign. It is what is outside of you, is your groups, your community, but it's also social issues and social causes. And maybe there's a tension that's happening in your astrology between, how do you participate, or maybe like where do you fit in what's, the world, or even you fit in your friend group on a more personal level. That said, we are 2 weeks off of a solar eclipse. The solar eclipse will be in your 5th, and so it says that the 5th, creativity, self-expression, talents, gifts, and abilities, identity, and self, is going to be a part of a much larger umbrella in your astrology. February in general is a time of bigger shifts. Some of these shifts are not so dramatic, but I just wanted to put on your radar, I think I said this last week, that Saturn in a week and a half is going to go into your, it's going to go into your 7th sign of relationships. And so it says that relationships is your priority until April of 2028. But in the meantime, it's a week and a half left of Saturn in Pisces. This has been 2.5, 3 years of needing to prioritize your health, your wellness, your work, your projects, your rituals, your craft, your practice, service to other people. And so Saturn is beginning to show you what this time has been about. Scorpio. So Mars is your planet, and Scorpio, we got some big astrology to talk about, because your sign is one of those signs that has a lot of things going on. in 2026, if not February 2026. So let's start with Mars. Mars is your planet. So right now, Mars is pulling the energy of your sign towards something called your fourth. The fourth is about home, family, roots, foundation. Sometimes when Mars goes through this part of our astrology, it's a noisy time in the home. We've got projects, we've got home improvement, we've got demolition, we've got family visiting. But maybe it's a time for you to go inward, to sort of come back to that emotional core, getting into the past memories, mom and dad, ancestors, for example. There are a lot of planets right now in Aquarius. Keep in mind that Pluto is in this space, and it will be in this space for many years. So whatever has been coming up since, let's say, last week, week and a half, is sort of pointing towards a larger story in your life, and a larger story around transformation, almost a transportation, transformation in your life over the coming years. There will be a solar eclipse in this space. The solar eclipse will be on February 17th. It says that family, home, roots, past, memories, mom and dad will be a focal point into August of 2026. There may be a move, there may be a change in the household, there may be a change with family. We don't have to wait until February 17th because sometimes the eclipses begin to present even now. I'm just saying this so that you can begin to listen for this eclipse. The other big thing is that we will have Saturn going into Aries, and so we've got 1.5 weeks left of Saturn's time in Pisces. This has been a time for you to take yourself and take your talents seriously. So it's begin to see what this time has made for you, Scorpio. Then this week we have a Leo full moon, and that Leo full moon is in your career sign, your public life, your public reputation, the role that you play in this world. And a lunar eclipse, not a lunar eclipse, a full moon in this part of your astrology on some level says it's time to get recognition for your hard work. It's time to make a change in your professional life, maybe to make a decision about a career change or a job change, for example. But then there's Uranus direct. Uranus turns direct on February 3rd, and it turns direct in your relationship sign. So this is the last direct turn of Uranus in Taurus in your lifetime. Kind of a bigger conversation, but Scorpio, you have had Uranus opposing your sun or opposing your rising sign since May of 2018 and March of 2019. And I don't know about you, but I'm a Scorpio sun, and nothing in my life looks the same. Practically everything is different since 2018-19, which is not the case of what it was for years and years and years before. But this time has been about evolving and transforming how you connect and relate to people. Because Scorpio, my joke is typically Scorpio has the moat, the guard tower, the retina scan, the bodyguards, you have to go through all these levels in order to get into Scorpio's domain. And Uranus has been sort of saying to Scorpio, you can't do life alone. As sort of self-reliant as Scorpio can be, you can't do life alone. So even though you have, April's 2.5 months left of Uranus and Taurus, whatever is happening this week connects to a larger story since 2018, 2019, but is also beginning to bring the chapter to a close and hopefully to put more into frame or context or into consciousness what this time has been about. But this could be a week where things are beginning to shake up. We are, again, 2 weeks from a solar eclipse. Things are shaking up in general. And I would say to Scorpio, especially with that solar eclipse, you've got 6 months of things with the energy of Uranus and Taurus, perhaps really shifting and changing in your life. Sagittarius. So Sagittarius, Jupiter is your planet. And right now, Sagittarius, Jupiter is in Cancer. But Jupiter spends a year in each of the zodiac signs. So sort of the larger time in your astrology since June of 2025 until the end of June of 2026 is about Cancer. It's about emotions and connections and family and past and memories. It's also legacies. It's also home, but it's also the 8th. It's about really doing some deep work and going within. In general, for Sag, this has been a time in your astrology where things have mostly, over the past few years, and I would say even the past 10 years, really, 8 years, Saturn, ever since Saturn left Sagittarius, went into Sagittarius at the beginning of 2015, it's been about your inner world. It's been about home and family. Now, eventually Saturn will get to Gemini. We're not there yet. That's your external world. But it's just to sort of look back at the past however many years, especially with Saturn and Pisces since March of 2023, where you've been in a period of settling down. So it's been about home. It's been about family. That's been your priority again over the last 3 years. But Saturn is about to leave this space. And so as Saturn is in its last week of Saturn and Pisces, what has it made? What has it built? What have you learned? What has the sort of focus and priorities created for you? Of course, every Sag rising is different. But in general, it's been a time to put down roots. It's been a time to really shore up your foundation and to make more solid this sort of greater construct around family. I realize family is a complicated subject matter, but at least on paper, that's what it's been about. That energy will pull away on February 13th. That's a different conversation for a different time. We do, speaking of Saturn, it is in the last moments of Pisces, so it is a time also to let something go, especially if it's family related, something that you've been holding in your heart, something that you've been holding in your psyche, because to some degree you don't want to bring it with you into that next chapter of your life. The Leo full moon is in something called your ninth sign. The ninth sign is about foreign travel, journeys, exploration. It's philosophy. It's what do you believe in and what do you stand for. And so this is a week, even though the full moon was yesterday, it still kind of diffuses its energy into the week. It's a week for you to really speak about something, share something, stand behind something. The ninth is also a space where we have a sense of, or at least we form a sense of what is right and what is wrong, for example. This space is going to get a bigger focus. Jupiter will go into your ninth at the end of June. We'll have a solar eclipse on on August 12th. And it says that the second half of the year is at least on paper, a very different time for you. More recent, as in February, we will have a solar eclipse in something called your third. It says the next 6 months, the real focus could be a lot of movement, a lot of travel, a lot of study, classes, something about voice and communication. It creates a lot of restless movement. And even with Uranus, that's square to Uranus and Taurus, your sixth sign, perhaps even a lot of work. So it is just a very busy, at least on paper, a very busy next 6 months that brings you into a very different second half of the year. What else? So Mercury will go into Pisces. Mercury is a relationships planet, and it brings that energy to home and family. So some of this sort of wrap up around home and family that you've been working on since 2023, Mercury begins to add to that story about relationships with family, and that might be a bigger topic that even takes you into the next 2 months. Capricorn, so Saturn is your planet, and right now Saturn is in its last week and a half of Pisces. So this has been a big time, for you, Capricorn, because Saturn is your planet. Saturn rules you. And with Saturn at the last week and a half of its time in Pisces, in your lifetime, here I am about to talk about voice. It's about voice. It's about voice. It's about communication. It's about how you think and listen and learn. And something that I've also noticed, and I think I even mentioned this last week, I've noticed again and again as an astrologer, when Saturn is in the third, the deeper lesson is about choices and the choices that you are making. So sometimes the choices that we make are very pivotal, and that sets us up, especially when Saturn goes into Aries on February 13th. That said, listen for this time, because Saturn is beginning to show you, what have you made with this time? What have you learned? What have you built? What have you committed to? Because that energy will change when Saturn goes into Aries on February 13th, and it will be in Aries for the next 2.5 years. That's another conversation for another time. Too many things to talk about. So that said, we are 2 weeks away from a solar eclipse. This solar eclipse is going to be in your second sign of money, income, material stability, and security. So for the next 6 months, roughly, there is a financial component. It could be literally financial. It's like what the money that you make, the money that you spend, the things that you invest in, the things that you own, buying a house, buying property, maybe bigger questions about what you need. The second, in Aquarius is your second sign. It is a space where we really get into the fundamentals: food, water, shelter. And that's where, for one person, it's buying a house. Not everybody has that luxury, of course, but for another person, it's to really look at these basics and to put renewed energy and to make changes around these basics, for example. This eclipse, maybe you're already feeling it. Maybe you already sense that there's a bigger financial component to your life at the moment. If it's not literally finances, it could be a question about stability and security. Am I safe? Do I have enough? How do I create stability in my life? Maybe it's even about value and worth. Really looking at bigger questions about self-worth and value, for example. In the interim, because that eclipse is 2 weeks away, we do, or at least yesterday, we had a full moon in Leo. Leo is something called your 8th sign. So there is a dynamic in the sky at the moment that is between bigger questions about finances and assets and investments, and also the things that you own, the things that are yours. But maybe it's emotional, maybe it's legacies, maybe it's inheritances, maybe it's the things that you carry. Maybe it's a need to look at a deeper emotional component or do inner work or healing with this full moon. Listen for what's going on with this full moon, because this area of your chart will take on bigger significance in the second half of 2026. Jupiter will go into this space. There'll be an eclipse in this space in August 12th of 2026. So it's really about your material life throughout 2026. It's also about your emotional life. It's about transitions, and it's about needing to strip away anything that's not truly who you are, or perhaps even what you need. Aquarius, happy birthday, Aquarius. There's just so much going on in your astrology, so much going on in your sign at the moment, because at present there are 5 planets in your sign. So we've got the sun, it's your birthday, or your Aquarius rising, and it's the start of your personal calendar. It's a time of new beginnings, renewal, action. I'm going to put that in quotes, because if you heard my introduction, it's not a time to take action, at least not until February 13th. Let's start with Saturn. So Saturn is your planet. Saturn, since March of 2023, has been in Pisces. I know that I've said this like practically rote over the last 2.5 years, but Saturn in your second sign has said the larger umbrella of this time. The priorities of your life since 2023 have been financial. It could be literally the money that you have, the money you make, how you spend it, sort of bigger questions about value and worth, and creating material stability and security. Maybe it's been a little bit hard financially over the past 2.5 years. This time could also get into bigger questions about, what do you need in order to feel safe and to feel secure, or even what's of value and of worth to you, for example. We got one more week of Saturn's time in Pisces. It's bringing to a close. This time is to, again, listen for Saturn, but maybe you feel that you're a little bit in the in-between, because if your ruling planet is Saturn, it's taking you through the next week and a half through a place that's about endings. It's not about new beginnings. That's why I said, even though it's your birthday, even though technically on paper it's time to start something, you're in this weird liminal time until the 13th. We're also 2 weeks away from a solar eclipse. So this full moon that we had yesterday, February 1st, was about relationships. It's about the people in your life needing to make a decision about a relationship, people coming into your life, and is really playing off a larger dynamic that you're going to see throughout 2026. It's about you and it's about other people. It's about starting a relationship or maybe some sort of shift and transition in an existing relationship. But then there's that solar eclipse. That solar eclipse on February 17th, so 2 weeks from now, says that big time to be an Aquarius. It's a time of new beginnings and perhaps even big personal changes over the next 6 months. This week, not the next 6 months from now, but this week, Uranus will turn direct. This will be tomorrow, February 3rd. Uranus turns direct in Taurus, your sign of home, family, roots, foundation, this part of your life, the household, the family, your sense of home maybe has profoundly changed over the last 6-7 years. So there's just a lot of stuff that's happening in your astrology. It's about you. Again, it's about other people. It's about your home. It's about the past. It's about families. But it says that February is a big month for you. And that shifts, you might feel the bigger shifts, especially when Saturn gets into Aries, time of new beginnings, on February 13th. Finally, Pisces. So Jupiter is your planet, and Jupiter, as I've been saying since June, Jupiter is in Cancer, your sign of creativity, self-expression, joy. I know maybe it's been a hard time for Pisces rising, because you have had Saturn in your sign since March of 2023. You've had eclipses in your sign since September of 2024, and that mix has just been saying it's not been a quiet time to be a Pisces or Pisces rising. Let's talk about Saturn. Saturn is in the last week and a half of its time in Pisces, so you can cross those dates off your calendar. It will not return to Pisces for another 30 years. So this has been a really important time in your life. I know it's easy to sort of say, okay, I'm so glad Saturn is out of my sign, but sort of listen to Saturn. Listen to what you have learned over the last 3 years. Maybe this is your exit interview as Saturn gets to its last moments of Pisces, especially this week when it reaches 29 degrees of Pisces. Because this time, to some degree, has taught you about self-reliance. It's taught you about needing to stand on your own 2 feet, or in some cases, to stand up for yourself. It's about setting boundaries. Saturn loves boundaries. Pisces isn't always so great with boundaries, for example. And maybe it's been a time of personal milestones, especially with the eclipses, about relationships, about you. A lot of things have been happening. And to go back to that Jupiter, and I've said this a few times in the past, however many years we've been doing this, like Jupiter in your 5th, at least since past June, has been about really trying to get you back to the things that light you up and give you joy and give you passion. In a time when so much perhaps has been asked of you with Saturn in Pisces. We are 2 weeks away from a solar eclipse. The solar eclipse will be in Aquarius. Aquarius is something called your 12th sign. So while 2025 was a time of new beginnings, about relationships, about you, 2026, the narrative is beginning to shift. It's beginning to shift towards bigger spiritual spaces. The 12th, Aquarius is your 12th sign. Right now, there's all these planets in Aquarius. It's about really trying to seek meaning and purpose to your life. It could be something as simple as meaning and purpose to what you've been through, or meaning and purpose to your existence on planet Earth. Maybe it's a search for spirituality. Over the next 6 months, the bigger arc and focus is spiritual. You have to answer that time in your own way. That's the part, the 50% that's you. And if this is a unknown country, how do you start to bring some energy and some time to your existence and what you've been creating in your life? The dynamic between Aquarius and Leo, we have a Leo full moon this week. Leo is something called your sixth sign. On one hand, this is a week to really look at your health, your wellness, get your checkups, take your vitamins, eat your Wheaties, whatever it is, focus on making positive changes in your health and wellness. But with the energy of Aquarius, your 12th sign, it's about heaven and earth, so to speak. It's about your life that you can't see, that is greater than you, and the life that you can see, your day-to-day. And that's a lot of the dynamic in 2026 for you, and especially when Jupiter gets into Leo at the very end of June of 2026, you might find that the second half of the year is a bit different. It's about work and projects, and especially Pisces is a sign that in general is seeking meaning and purpose. It's not to say that all Pisces are spiritual, but it is a spiritual sign. And so maybe in the second half of the year, you're trying to align your day-to-day life, your rituals, your habits, in order to feel like you are connecting or fulfilling your life on a much deeper purpose, deeper meaning, deeper level. So there you go. Lots going on. That's your look at the astrology for February 2nd through 8th of 2026. So again, my name is Katie Sweetman. This is Empowering Astrology. You can follow me online at empoweringastrology.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Spotify. I'm on YouTube. Some of you are my clients. You can book a consultation with me. It's a lot of big astrology. It's good to have a one-on-one to be able to tease it all out. So I appreciate you all, and I will see you next week. Take care.